Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to be starting here in a couple minutes. I just want to let everybody get in from the waiting room. We have a pretty big group today, which is exciting. And I think that's everybody. So let's get started. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for celebrating International Women's Day with us here at ULI Pittsburgh. We welcome you to our Women in Construction program, which we are so excited. We are glad to have so many of you here with us from across the country. I saw, there's some people from outside of Pittsburgh, so that's amazing. As always, thank you to our sponsors that make our programming possible. Just some housekeeping items. Please make sure your mics are on mute throughout the program to prevent any distractions. Also, we'll be engaging in a Q&A after our presentation. So at any point, if you would like to insert your questions into the chat, that would be fine as well. After the program, we are going to do our networking breakout rooms if you would love to have a smaller informal discussion for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then everybody can depart from those breakout rooms and enjoy the rest of your Monday. I will now hand it over to Dusty Kirk, our WLI chair. Thank you, Dusty.
Thank you, Jamie. And I want to thank all of our sponsors today. It's a great day. It's International Women's Day, and we are so excited to have this panel of women join us today. These outstanding women who are really groundbreaking in their careers. So I'm going to start with a really brief introductions. I think you'll hear more about them as the discussion proceeds. But we have the Vice President and General Manager of Turner Construction with us, Jodi Rennie. And she's been with Turner for 34 years and really has achieved the heights of a woman in construction by being the Vice President and General Manager of Turner Construction's company, Pennsylvania region. And we also have Stacey Weniger with us, who is the founder and president of Sentinel Construction. And it's a women and minority owned construction company, full service general contractor and construction management. But if that isn't enough, Stacey was in the finance side of commercial real estate, involved in 3 billion, B with a B, 3 billion with a B, transactions in commercial real estate. We also have a groundbreaking woman in construction, Jamie Gildersleeve, who is the Director of Human Resources. I can't think of what the challenges you face every day, Jamie, but she has been with 10 years with H&R and project management experience. So I think that you have hands-on experience with how to deal with any HR issues. Her goal, and she exudes humble, hungry, and smart mentality of the Mascaro advantage. And we're so glad to have her here today. And last but not least is our moderator and WLI member, Alyssa Kunzelman. And she has 20 years experience also in the construction industry. And she's at Mascaro as well. She's the Director of Business Development at Mascaro. And she has long-term client and industry related relationships. And if you know Alyssa, you know that she is a go-getter and she's a star in her field. And she not only sits on our WLI Steering Committee, she is also on the member of the board of NAOP, and she is on crew, and she serves as a leader in her community, the board of directors of Greensburg Community Development Corporation, advisory board of the Community Foundation of Westmoreland County, which is a affiliate with the Pittsburgh Foundation, I should say. And she also is on the Westmoreland Chamber of Commerce. So, we are so glad to have you as the moderator today, Alyssa, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dusty, so much. I appreciate it. I am honored to serve as moderator for this panel of accomplished executives in the construction industry on International Women's Day and Women in Construction Week. Before we dive into the panel discussion, I want to frame the discussion a bit. Why are we still having these discussions in 2021? Here are some women in construction and women in the workforce statistics. According to the most recent statistics garnered by the National Association of Women in Construction from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics in 2018, women working in construction numbered 1.5% of the entire U.S. workforce in 2018. Approximately 1.1 million women were employed in various occupation sectors of the construction industry. Women now make up nearly 10% of the construction industry in the U.S. Women in the U.S. earn on average 81.1% of what men make. The gender pay gap is significantly smaller in construction occupations, with women earning on average 99.1% of what men make. Additionally, in the recently released McKinsey & Co. and leanin.org report entitled Women in the Workplace 2020, Corporate America is at a critical crossroads, which WLI highlighted 2 weeks ago in a program. Quote, the events of 2020 have turned workplaces upside down. Under the highly challenging circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic, many employees are struggling to do their jobs. Many feel like they're always on now that the boundaries between work and home have blurred. They're worried about their family's health and finances. Burnout is a real issue. However, due to the challenges created by the COVID-19 crisis, as many as 2 million women are considering leaving the workforce. If these women feel forced to leave the workplace, we'll end up with far fewer women in leadership and fewer women on track to be future leaders. All the progress we've seen over the past 6 years could be erased. But in spite of these setbacks, there are opportunities and success stories. We now want to chat with our panelists to learn more about their experiences. So the first question I have is, why construction? What other positions or jobs have you considered in the past? And how did you decide on this position? So Jodi, we'll start with you.
So I fell into construction as kind of a happy accident. And there's probably some of my colleagues on this phone that don't even realize this, but when I went for my interview, I thought I was interviewing with Turner Broadcasting. I didn't know I was going for an interview with Turner Construction Company. So it was just very much as I like to call it, a happy accident that I fell into this business. My degree is in psychology, so I'm not a traditional civil engineer like a lot of my colleagues at Turner are or in the industry are. And I just fell in love with the company, sort of the values of the company very early on. I started in a very entry-level position and really just spent the rest of my career learning the construction business very much from the ground up. And obviously, being a woman at that time, 34 years ago, is very different. Our industry was very different. We've changed a lot, thankfully, and there are a lot more opportunities for women. But at that time, it was kind of two strikes against me. I didn't have an engineering degree, and I was a woman. So I set my mind out to just work, outwork everyone. Basically, was my strategy. I took assignments that no one else wanted. I studied on my own at night to, if there was something I didn't know, if I didn't have a male mentor that I could ask, I just did my own research. So I felt like it took me longer, but I wanted to have street cred. When I finally got the opportunity, I didn't want anyone to doubt my ability. So yeah, that's just a little bit about kind of how it all came to be for me.
Great, Jodi, thank you. Stacey, how about you?
I would say, similar to Jodi, it was somewhat of a happy accident. When I graduated from college in 2001, I had a finance degree. I thought I was going to be, some like financial planner, trading stocks, doing all of this kind of stuff. But if you recall, that was the dot-com bubble burst, and I had to figure out something else. And I interviewed, at the time, it was GMAC Commercial Mortgage, and they did finance huge commercial real estate projects across the country. Started as an admin, became a portfolio manager, and really, caught the bug of commercial real estate. I think a lot of us know, when you're in this industry, you pretty much love it, and, just worked my way up, and, I financed a lot of construction projects. And so, the question is like, so how do you get from financing construction to actually managing a construction company? At that point in my career, I was in my mid-30s, and I just really didn't know where else to go in my career. I was a lender. The only place for me to go at that point was to become a team leader, which actually would have taken me away from the things that I really liked about my job, which was, managing the relationships, doing the actual finance and being able to be involved in the projects. And so I wanted to change, but I didn't know what to do. So of course, talking with my husband, I was like, I want to start a company. I think I have the skill set to start a company, but I don't want to get away from construction and commercial real estate. And as many of you know, my husband is an engineer. And I was like, do you think we could do this? I could do the business, the operations side. And so we continued to talk about it. And later on had roped in Michael Pfeiffer, who's my business partner. And, we thought we had a shot. And so together we took the jump, and here we are 5 years later, and it's working out so far.
That's great, Stacey. It is. Jamie, you're up.
So if you would have asked me at 18 what I was going to be when I grew up, I swear I would have been graduated from officer candidate school and jumping out of helicopters somewhere down south as a member of the United States Coast Guard. Clearly did not have HR in the brain at the age of 18. But as you all know on this call, life leads you down a path and you just run with it. So for the past 10, 11 years, I've really kind of breathed and stretched into this niche side of the business called HR. And making the jump into construction, it's funny, on a whim, I was actually in the hospital, had just delivered my second child. And I was a part of a mom's group on Facebook, and one of the moms had posted for her company that they were looking for somebody. It was a pre-engineered steel building company. And I was, it was probably 3 a.m, I think, if I recall, right, when I messaged her and sent her my resume, because at that point, 7 years into my career, I had a lot of HR, project management, and program management experience. And, aside from the 2 years that I spent as a generalist for a refractory company, and while I loved my role and I loved my job, I loved my company, there was this piece of me that just, I felt that it was calling me to, transition to a company that would have a direct impact, like where I could have a direct impact, a company where the employees, its staff would feel my energy and my contributions on a really intimate level. And sometimes when you're in big corporate, you lose a little bit of that, you think of the waves. And so it was a whim and I went for it, and I haven't looked back since.
Great. Thank you, ladies. I enjoyed hearing all your different perspectives. So the next question, what or who has been the biggest help in getting you to this point in your career? And what advice would you offer for those who want to set off in a similar direction? Jamie, you want to take it?
Yeah, I can absolutely take that one. I love this question. And often when we're on campus recruiting, our junior talent's asking the same questions like, how do I get to be this PM in 5 years? Or, how did you get, you went from here to here, how did you get there? And so I say some of the most, those spheres of influence when I look back over my career were those in leadership roles that exuded behaviors that had a negative impact on their employees. So I really, obviously I had great mentors. I had great mentors that met me for brunch or met me for coffee, spent a couple hours, digging in and talking about projects that I was working on. But those biggest spheres of influence were really those people that weren't the type of leader that I wanted to be. So I saw how they they showed up every day and how they impacted those around them negatively. And I've taken the different course, right? So you learn from others' mistakes a little bit. But in terms of advice, so my advice to all genders is just definitely don't put yourself in a box. You know, I think in this very prevalent cancel culture, don't cancel yourself before you get out the door in the morning. Lean in, ask questions, listen, follow up, practice, show that grit, show that perseverance. It'll continually open up doors for you. You know, and I think it's extremely tragic when you hear that people, you know, especially women who don't celebrate their friends or their peers' successes. You know, those wins don't take anything from us individually, right? They make the room bigger. They, you know, I think of Stacey and Jodi, they brought the ceiling down, like, you know, that we can, you know, hopefully continue to achieve. So, and working moms, I feel you. We're in this together. I'm in the throes of it right now, right? I feel that every day the success of my family starts when my alarm goes off in the morning and the preparation that I did the night before. You know, so every day is a new day. Just breathe into it and keep churning.
Thanks, Jamie. Jodi, how about you?
Yeah, I had one very definite mentor in Turner who helped me make the leap more to the operations side of the business, and was incredibly hard on me at the time. You know, I pretty much hated him on a daily basis because I'm like, why is he being so hard on me? And I think it was many years later that I realized that he knew sort of the challenges that I was going to face in the industry. And he really wanted to test my mettle, and he did. And I still interact with him today a lot. He still challenges me all the time. But he is one person I could point to definitively for really changing the trajectory of my career in Turner. Personally, I would say I had a lot of family influences. My mom and my grandmother were huge influences on me. We as the ladies know, we had a pre-call last week. My mother was a godsend as I was, you know, when my career started accelerating, my children were 3 and 7. And it was such a challenge to be completely devoted to work, which felt like a 24-hour commitment, and to raise 2 kids. And even with I married the love of my life, the greatest husband in the world. Even with that, not having my mom would have been impossible to fully commit myself to work when I needed to, knowing that my kids were with grandma or with dad. So I'd say, you know, personally and professionally, those were 2, but also always in my mind, knowing that there were a lot of women that were going to come after me. And I always wanted to achieve for them. I was always very mindful of the fact that if I screwed this up, someone else behind me might not get the opportunity. So I would say those are the 3 sort of influences.
Thanks, Jodi. Stacey, your comment?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's kind of a tale of 2 careers. And the first one, it was a what, and the second one is a who. You know, I grew up in a working class family. I was the first person to go to college in my family. I didn't have a lot of direction, not because my family didn't want to give me direction, they just didn't know how to give me direction. And it's just based on their experiences. And, you know, I started working, you know, I was the kid, you know, 5 years old selling the Otter Pops in the front yard, you know, and, you know, got a job when I was 16. When I was a senior in high school, I was actually in co-op. I'm not sure if y'all know what that is, but I went to school a couple hours in the morning for the remaining credits I needed. And the rest of the credits I got were from working. I went to college. I picked a college just based off where my friends went because I didn't know any better. I picked finance because I thought business people made money and I was good at math. So I kind of put the 2 together and came up with finance. You know, and like I mentioned earlier, kind of fell into commercial real estate. But, you know, my parents had really instilled a very strong work ethic in me, in saying, you know, if you want to get, you know, achieve, you're going to need to figure out how to do that yourself. And, you know, the first time I received a significant promotion, because I asked for it, there was a position that came available on the production side. And that's really where I knew I could grow. And I just went and asked for it, and I got the position. I didn't know, you know, what to do next. So I was like, well, I guess I'll get my graduate degree and started going to school at night. Then I finished that, and it's like, okay, I want to have a bigger challenge. I moved to Chicago after taking a job with Merrill Lynch Capital. Then got nailed by the recession, was out of work. My parents did not have a basement for me to live in, and I was not going to go live in a box. So I started researching markets, and that's when I saw that Pittsburgh had a flat market, which is boring when things are good, but when things are bad, it's an oasis. And the first time I'd ever been to Pittsburgh was when I came to interview, and I moved a month later, you know, pretty much sight unseen. You know, did the ping pong with banking. And, you know, I really think it was just that strong work ethic that they had instilled in me to just keep focusing on what the next step was in my career. But life changed a lot when I had my first child when I was 35. It changed everything. I learned then that I had to rely on others. Fortunately, like Jodi, I have an incredible husband who, you know, splits all the hard work with me and makes things possible. His parents watch our children and allows me to have that comfort of knowing they're somewhere where they're loved. And if I have to be out, you know, at events or whatever, I know that they're going to be well taken care of. So much so that they actually moved across the street from us. You know, and having the support system was critical in, you know, taking the next big step in my career, you know, creating Sentinel. And, you know, building a company is never about one person, you know, so without Michael Weniger and Michael Pfeiffer, it wouldn't have happened. But, you know, why did we think we could do it? Well, we thought we could do it actually because of all of you, because of the strong network that we have in the commercial real estate industry in Pittsburgh. You know, I've always felt supported since I've moved here. And I, you know, had just had discussions with people and just felt really encouraged. And those relationships have really what has catapulted Sentinel to what it is today. And then, of course, building our team, when we have the most incredible, you know, team members that without them, we wouldn't have been able to grow. And, you know, so my advice to people would be, you know, have a strong work ethic, allow others to support you, even when you think you can do it yourself, surround yourself with team players, and build your network, because those are the people that are going to support you when you want to take your next step in your career.
Thank you. I think many of us can, you know, empathize with who we have in our lives, whether it's, you know, frankly, our colleagues, our bosses, our family, our friends, our neighbor, whoever it is that can help out to enable us to do what we do, you know, nights, evenings. It's amazing. So I appreciate your sentiments in this, because I feel very similar to those. The next question, do you remember a specific experience of where you wish that the industry or your organization had done something differently? And if you were to do it over, what would you change? Jodi, I'm going to start with you.
You know, I don't know that there is a specific incident. I feel like I'm really fortunate to work for a company that's very forward looking, and we don't always get it right, but we are we're good learners, and when we know better, we do better, kind of a thing. We improve. I think looking back, you know, probably one of the things we didn't do very well was you mentioned it, Alyssa, when you talked about the stats about women stepping out of the workforce, and I think Jamie alluded to it too, counting yourself out. I think there was a period of time in our company where we counted women out, whether it was intentional or not, where there were perceptions that, okay, if it's a young woman, a newly married woman, a woman who wants to start a family or who has young children, I think there was more trepidation around future assignments. And it wasn't something that was overt. It wasn't, like people sitting around a table saying, don't pick her because she's going to have a baby. But there was this undercurrent about women's commitment. And I don't think that's necessarily just in Turner. I think in our industry, there was this in many industries, that women couldn't be equally committed to their job and their families. So I think if we could have changed anything in our industry, I think it would have been recognizing that women can balance careers and family. We just talked a lot about support. I think it's important to remember not everyone is as lucky as I am to have had that kind of support, or as my fellow panelists. So when we can, we need to be aware of that as leaders when we have staff that need more support. Maybe they don't have it. But I think definitely, in hindsight, I think what could our industry have been if we have gotten on the train a lot sooner, because those questions weren't being said or thought of about male colleagues at that time. And one of the best things that I've think have happened to women in construction is that we're talking about employee issues now instead of women's issues. When it comes to raising family, a lot of the men in our company want to be active fathers. So the conversation has morphed into a women's conversation. Now it's an employee conversation. I think that's been very good. But I think historically, 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, we weren't doing that well having the conversation about advancing women, especially around their commitments to their families.
Thank you, Jodi. I loved your comment. When we know better, we do better. I appreciated that. Jamie, your comments.
Yeah, I really have to echo Jodi on this. As I was listening to her speak, I'm like, okay, let me think about an experience where, our industry or the those organizations that I've worked for within our industry, what could we have done different? But what sticks out to me, and this might just be because I'm always a glass half full type of person, but I think of the moments like, when your bosses are right beside you, they're rolling up their sleeves and we're getting work done together, right? I think of, because I think the company that you work for, those that employ you, they become sort of like your professional compass, right? So do your values align with who you're working for? So fortunately for me, like I've aligned myself with companies that do have great values, and for male counterparts that do stick up for those that might be perceived to be, slightly disadvantaged. So I would say, so I can, it's really hard for me to think of an example. I've been lucky, right? We have a great bosses here at Mascaro. They exude this partnership and this collaborative nature, across all their employees. So, and I walked 2 years ago when I walked in here, there's a nursing room for expectant mothers. And we didn't have that even in financial services. We didn't have that 8 years ago. So I just thought that was, man, they're ahead of the curve. And just even in that just little piece, that stuff matters.
Thanks, Jamie. Stacey?
Yeah, so I was trying to think of whether or not I would actually want to talk about this or not, but I think it is important. And I think so many strides have been made to change this. But, back when I was in Chicago, our company, we were national. And so the company once a year would have these big conferences where they brought everybody in for 2 days. And, so everybody could really get to know each other, have some team building events. But the reality is like what happened is everybody started drinking at noon, you know, and the party didn't stop till 3 a.m. I highly advise against that, you know, because mixing that much time, business, alcohol.
Yeah, where do you want to put it?
Sorry,
Excuse me, can we make sure that everyone's muted, please? Thanks.
really created a situation for bad things to happen. And it was so normal back then to like have, you know, like these big closing dinners and parties and this and that. And, you know, at the time, I think I was, you know, 27. And it just really caused, I think, a lot of the younger women to be put in weird situations where you were really having to defend yourself. And, you know, it's something that I will never forget. People lost their jobs. There was other people that should have lost their jobs, you know, and so I think it's always, you know, something to be mindful of if you know, want to have team building and things like that, but to make sure it's done the right way, to, you know, make sure that you don't end up creating a culture that isn't right for everybody.
Thank you, Stacey. I appreciate your you know, honest and real comments of things in the past. This is a little bit of an HR slant question, so we'll start with Jamie. So in all of your respective roles, you are tasked with making new hires. What are some of the main traits you look for in your employees?
So as the HR nerd in the room, I appreciate you starting with me because this is right up my alley. I love all of this. So what are we, you know, what are some of the main traits we're looking for? You know, often when I look at the resume, they got the schooling, they have the trade experience, the background, right? But how do you differentiate yourself in those interviews? I want to see your energy, your charisma, your authenticity. Tell me who you are. Where have you been? Where do you want to go? Tell me how you're going to get there, right? Have a plan. You know, I think it's really important to show the competence, the drive, the grit, the perseverance, that emotional intelligence. All of that can come out in your interview space. Just be authentic, be yourself. You know, I think of the junior talent when we're on campus, man, to see their energy and their excitement and their drive just to get their foot in the door. Don't lose that as you go through your career. Don't lose that.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Jodi?
Yeah, this is a good question. Really good question, because we have lots of layers of interviewing. You know, we have recruiters. We have, when we college recruit, we have multiple Turner staff that review resumes, and my take on it is always a little bit different. And part of it, I think, is because my own personal slant, coming from a different background, I'm always looking for a candidate that might be a little bit different. And I tend to think that, I know one of the things we've been focusing on a lot in Turner in the last year or two is, you know, training our recruiters, our people who are looking at resumes and people who are doing interviews, giving them more training about questions and about the person's experience. And for instance, you know, we highly prize in our industry internships in construction. But what about that kid that had to take a job at McDonald's because they had to provide money for their families, or maybe they were working 2 jobs, not in construction, but because of their family situation, they couldn't get an internship with a construction company. You know, previously, in years past, I think that resume would have been dismissed out of hand. And I think, you know, a lot of times we're finding this it disproportionately impacts diverse candidates also. So I feel like, you know, getting to know the person, understanding what that person brings in terms of experience, and maybe it's not necessarily construction experience, but it's more about the person's work ethic and their life experience. I think that that's a much better way of approaching. And you know, I agree with everything Jamie said. Yeah, we want energy and enthusiasm. We work in a high energy, high intensity business. But I think that it's important that we get to know people on a different level and kind of widen the lens that we look at potential candidates that we want to bring into our industry, because we have to broaden our view of what a good construction employee looks like, literally looks like.
Thank you, Jodi. Stacey?
Yeah, for us, it's a little bit different. We are a smaller company, so we don't have a whole lot of layers. And so the big thing for us is always, we're always looking for a team player, someone that doesn't have an ego, that's willing to be, the PM on the job and also take out the trash. We really just have to operate as a team and be willing to do anything and everything, even if it's not part of your job description. But, fortunately, when everyone has that attitude, it really comes together well and forms a great place to work where, everyone feels like they have input, and they do. We are always looking for ways to make things better, and we value, all of the different ideas that people bring. And I think that has helped us improve our company over the years.
Great. Well, Stacey, I'm going to stay with you on this next question. This one's for you and Jamie specifically because of your past. You both worked, as you both mentioned, in financial services firms before you worked for construction firms. So can you talk about that, how that affected your entree, whether it did or didn't, into the construction industry?
Yeah, so, like I mentioned, I finance construction projects. So I was always in the industry, and, it's the same, it's always been the same thing for me where, the most exciting part of my job is seeing a project come out of the ground. To me, there is just nothing like it. That you're part of this huge team that has, come together to make this happen. And, you actually get to see what you and this team have created. So I feel like I've always been, in the construction industry. It was just a different role in the construction industry, providing the financing for it, versus now being on the GC side.
Great. Jamie?
Making sure I'm unmuted. First day on a live web. So really great question. So for the 10 or 11 years that I've been in HR, 5 of those are really dedicated to financial services. And if I can use a construction analogy, those 5 years really, they were the anchor bolts, right? They were the setting of the anchor bolts for my career, right? Because if you don't set your anchor bolts on center, you're going to have a problem with your building. So that framework, that discipline, the quantity of reps that I got in big corporate and specifically financial services, that's what I really needed to fine tune myself as an HR professional. And then on a whim, like I said, after just having my second child, reaching out and going for that operations manager role with a smaller subcontractor, then I really stretched myself, right? I found myself on a different side of the business, honing in on those skills that I learned as an HR professional, the project management, the program management, but now really getting my boots muddy, right? I was out there, I was sitting in subcontractor meetings, often the only female in the room, and having to really rely on those relationships. And I think in those 3 years that I spent there, HR was calling me. So, really found a great opportunity with Mascaro then to blend both experiences. So the financial services and the HR professional that I've come to love. And then also, that hands-on construction experience, was able to blend it. So now, as I'm talking to those in the field, those here in the office, like I'm able to, relate, right? I'm able to speak the speak. I hopefully have a little bit more street cred because, I was out there just in the field, just like they were, maybe not to the degree or the length of time. But yeah, I wouldn't give up those 5 years whatsoever. I think that's really, it's kind of like another tool on my tool belt.
Thanks to you both. Jodi, this next one is for you. And I see the executive director of the MBA on and some board members. So I want you all to understand this is coming out in a positive way. So Jodi, congratulations on being named the first female board member of the Master Builders Association of Western Pennsylvania, or otherwise known as the MBA. This is a notable accomplishment as the MBA was founded, and I had to look this up, I wasn't sure, 1886. So please share how this opportunity was introduced, why it took so long to have its first female on the board, and the MBA's recent efforts to hire a director of workforce development and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack, but so how it came about was Dave's predecessor, Jack Ramage, approached me a couple of years ago now about to gauge my interest in joining the board. And what I imagined was that the then board all talked about it and said, hey, there's this woman that's running a company now, and it would be great to have her join us. I mean, that's I never asked them, but that's the story that's the movie that plays it in my head. And I think that, you know, genuinely, and I know a lot of people say it's a long time, it took too long. I'm going to give a very pragmatic answer, and then I'll follow up with a little bit of my opinion. The MBA is a board that has bylaws, and frankly, it says that you have to meet certain criteria to be considered for the board. Running a company, being signatory to unions. I mean, there are components of that. So it's a very pragmatic part of the answer that says, before I showed up on the landscape in Pittsburgh to run Turner's operations, to my knowledge, there wasn't another a woman in Pittsburgh running a construction company that met the requirements of the MBA board. So it's a very sort of pragmatic answer. I will tell you that and I'm not just saying this because I saw Michael in the list and Dave, and I'm not just saying that because they're on the phone, but they have treated me as an absolute equal. They embraced me from the moment I joined the board. They value my input. I'm very comfortable in the male space, obviously, because of my generation. It was not uncommon for me to be the only woman in meetings, but I genuinely believe that they see me as an equal. They value my opinion. And I think that had there been other women, I mean, this points to a problem that is not exclusive to the MBA. It points to why aren't there more women in leadership roles on boards in every industry, including construction? And the reason is that women are underrepresented. You have to be eligible to be even considered, right? So you have multiple hurdles to climb when you're women, and there just aren't enough women to even be considered. So I think that from an MBA standpoint, I think that it would have come sooner had there been a woman, because I actually find the board, and I didn't think they were going to be as forward thinking as they are. And I hope they don't get a big head because they're hearing me say this, but I actually find them to be very forward thinking. And that leads into, the position that we're hiring for a director of diversity and inclusion. It's something that we've been talking about for the last year a lot, just in terms of, the need to be more diverse. It's not it's a conversation that's happening in a lot of companies. And we just said, we have to move from talk to action now. We want to represent, that board wants to represent the community that we live in. And right now we don't. So while we were reaching out into communities, engaging with community experts like George Robinson, because I saw George's name in there, and other institutions in Pittsburgh that care a lot about improving diversity, equity, inclusion across the construction industry and other industries in Pittsburgh. While we were reaching out and getting asking for help, and they were providing help, we just said, we have to make a more firm stand and show that we really want to move the needle with our board and our efforts to support the construction industry. And that's what drove us to, to hiring for this position, which I'm very happy to say is, in the process, and we're very close to start interviews and get someone hired. And I don't want to say too much because Dave will probably yell at me for giving too much away, but I think it's a big step. And I think having a group like the MBA make that step, it sets a great example for other organizations within Pittsburgh, because we are at a moment in our industry where actions speak louder than words, and it's time that we all take that step forward.
Thank you, Jodi. This will be the last question before we get into Q&A here. So piggybacking kind of off of that and the conversation about the MBA's efforts, what are your respective firms doing to improve diversity and opportunity within the workplace? Are there any roadblocks? And if so, how are you addressing them? So we'll start off with Jamie.
So at Mascaro, I feel thankful to work for a company. They make it really easy to be an HR director for a company that is intrinsically inclusive, right? And I think that says a lot about the family culture, started by Jack, really embodied by the brothers that are running the company now. We care about each other, right? So I think that matters when in this current kind of society where it is an active conversation. So, we believe in the right that everybody has the right to work in an environment that is free from harassment, and exclusionary practices. And we work really hard to make sure that doesn't happen. And that includes those who work with us and work for us, like our subcontractors and our vendors. But we doubled down. In 2020, Mascaro pledged their commitment to the culture of care that's championed by the AGC and the MBA. And just a statement, just putting it out there once again, that this is who we are, this is what we care about. You want to remove those barriers for advancement. You want to empower every employee to really promote this culture. It's not just for the higher ups to say, this is who we are, and that, you need to be thoughtful about this diversity and inclusion movement. Funny enough, I'm going to share a quote, and it was from I'm a little embarrassed, but it was like from a social media, or not a social media. It was like from a reality TV star, but she said it and it was so powerful. And I had to write it down. So I'm going to pull up my phone, but she said, if you're sitting in a space where you're miles ahead of people who have been oppressed, then it's your job to fight for those people. So while Mascaro might have a culture that we're there, right? We think with a diverse mindset, we welcome those, we're inclusive. Though our counterparts in the industry might not be there yet. So we need to fight for those. We need to be the example. We need to set the example and collaborate with many of you on this call to make sure we continue doing that.
Thanks, Jamie. Stacey?
Yeah, so as previously mentioned, my company is both minority and woman owned certified. I'm a Mexican woman, so, I really, it's something that I'm sensitive about. And I also really feel that I'm responsible to help, advance the diversity and inclusion in our industry. And as Jodi said earlier, a challenge that we have right now is that the industry is not diverse. It is not easy to find women, people of color in the industry. And so something that I've been working on I sit on the executive committee of the board of directors for the YWCA. And, some of the things that we focus on there are STEM programs for young women, job training programs. And so I am working with them to create a STEM program specifically around construction for the young girls that go through their program. So it introduces them to construction. It informs them about the different avenues, whether you go more on the engineering or business side of construction, or whether you go into the trades and all the benefits that come along with that, and the schooling requirements and the costs and all of these things, so they can make an informed decision of whether or not this is something they would have an interest in being part of. Another thing that I am working on is I have created a joint partnership between the YWCA and the Builders Guild. They have the Intro to the Trades program that is a fantastic program. It allows of any age, whether you're out of high school or they've had people that are 50 years old going through their program, it introduces them to all the various trades so that they can make an informed decision about what trade is of most interest to them and aligns with their natural skill set. And so that way we're getting more women involved in that program so that hopefully we see them out in the field, and that we have more, young women, people of color coming up with an interest in construction. So, I think it's something that we have to focus on is kind of more at this of a younger age, or people that need a change in direction or career direction, and really forming programs and ways for them to learn about it and to get into the industry without a huge financial investment. and having the support that they need, to get there.
Great. Thank you, Stacey. And Jodi, I'll end it with you then.
So I wish that we could spend a whole hour just talking about this topic. I nearly jumped on before you even asked me to, because so much is happening in Turner. And especially over the last year, I think we really made the shift to, we always talked about diversity and inclusion, but this year, over the last year, we really started focusing on equity. So a very important missing piece of that equation is equity. And we are not happy with where we are as a company with regard to equity. We do not have enough diverse staff. This is globally across our entire company, 10,000 Turner employees. We do not have enough diverse staff. We do not mirror the communities that we work in. It is very, very difficult, speaking of Pittsburgh specifically, to hire diverse staff. So what Drew Kerr and I, Drew who runs our operations with me, what we decided this year was, no matter what happens, at least half of our hires have to be diverse hires. And we're not compromising on that. So we started with our college recruiting. We hired 6 college recruits. 3 of them are diverse candidates, people of color, and women. I think the reason I bring up that example is because I think the data really matters. And I think we need to focus on it because math doesn't lie. And if you look at the percentage of diverse staff and companies in Pittsburgh, and everyone knows this, we have a problem. If you look at the trades, I think I was looking at data from last fall that said about 13% of the trades were diverse. And if you factor out a couple of trades, that number gets drastically lower. So, we all know that it's a problem. And I think now a lot of people in Pittsburgh, a lot of groups are working on the problem. But at the end of the day, it's a math problem and we need more pipeline. We need to, I think someone put in the chat, what are you doing to encourage young people to get into this industry? We have to be relentless as an industry, going into schools as early as elementary schools and certainly middle schools, talking about opportunities in the trades and also in companies like ours and management and leadership position. Because if we're not going to get out of this hole that we've dug if we do not funnel more people into the pipeline. So it's a passion of mine. I could go on, but I know we're limited for time. But yeah, I'll stop there. Stop there.
Thank you so much. I want to thank on behalf of WLI Pittsburgh, I want to thank all of you for your time today and having a thoughtful, real conversation with our attendees. Before we get into Q&A, which we have about 7 minutes for, sorry, we ran a little bit longer. And I encourage all of you now to chat. If you have any questions, please do so now. But the theme for International Women's Day 2021 is choose to challenge. There are many ways in which you can choose to challenge. And so in the spirit of International Women's Day and Women in Construction Week and beyond, WLI Pittsburgh wants to challenge you to consider any or all of the following ideas to support women. Acknowledge your colleagues, as well as any WBE subcontractors, business partners, vendors, etc. Refer women for career and project opportunities. Serve on professional and community boards and refer other women for open board positions. Ask for opportunities to advance. Nominate other women for awards. Offer thought leadership via articles, social media posts, serve as a mentor, offer job shadowing, and most importantly, be kind to and supportive of each other. Celebrate the wins and offer encouragement and empathy, especially during these trying times. So just some call to action for our attendees today. So I'm going to look at the chat. And again, I think Jodi touched on this a little bit, but Stacey or Jamie, if you'd like to add anything. As being leaders of the construction industry, how are your organizations getting younger people involved in the construction industry? Are you trying to bring kids out of high school into trades? We have noticed a huge lack of tradesmen and women all over the country, and I feel like it is so important to bring more people into any trade. So Stacey or Jamie, do you have any other thoughts or Jodi, additional thoughts on that?
So I can, Oops,
Oh,
go
go
ahead,
ahead, Jodi.
Stacey. Go ahead, Stacey.
Oh, I think I touched on it a little bit with the last question, but what I would encourage is for everybody, in our industry to, and sometimes it's hard, is like trying to find ways to get more involved with, younger students. And whether you can, if anyone wants to join me on my quest through the YWCA and, creating these programs, trust me, I could use all the help that I can get, because, I definitely know certain parts of the sector. I am, definitely use some help in building a well-rounded program. But that's kind of the avenue that I'm taking right now. But I think more needs to be done. And there's a lot of organizations that are committed to young children. And I think we just need to really focus on bringing that information into schools.
And I can echo Stacey, like especially with that information share. So many, we think about, what is that, BizTown, right? Or ACE mentorship program, all of these great resources that are out there. Even Mascaro's has joined with CCBC to form the Mascaro Construction Academy. But how do you get this information into the hands of the students, right? If their families don't come from the trades or are in engineering or have parents that have any type of degree, where are they getting that information? How can we start to be the mentors for them? So I think there's definitely lots of passion. I've met across my companies in construction, those, my fellow panelists, our director of marketing here, Marianne Berg, partners really closely with John Mascaro Jr. They just have this love and this focus, but we have to bridge that gap of getting, these great resource pages, sorry to plug Mascaro one more time, but our careers in construction page, right? All of these resources, but even with my younger cousins, I'm getting them, hey, did you see this, right? You don't want to do school. How about this? Like, check this out, see what's all out there for you. So it's definitely, I think that's, as much as the resources are out there in the programs, it's that information share. And I'm game on to tackle that.
Great, thank you. We have a few more questions. Not sure we have time for all of them because at 1 o'clock we're to kind of break out into our networking rooms, but I'm going to try to get to at least one or two more. How do we fairly deal with men who are also striving for success when they see diverse candidates being given opportunities for leadership and feel they've been passed over? If any of you would like to take that one.
Yeah, I'll jump in, I guess. And let me just say before I answer the question too, and I think I can safely say this on behalf of all the panel, thank you to the men who joined us today, because we very much understand that this is a conversation that men need to be a part of. And we're really happy that you took the time to support us and to join the conversation. So I would say that, there are a lot of decisions that go into hiring and promoting. Someone's not going to be happy. And I understand why men are feeling disenfranchised right now. I would say that, trust the process, trust your HR team, trust the people, the operations folks that are doing these interviews, and be honest with yourself, because, it's very likely that a female candidate with equal experience is just as qualified for the job. So, I would say challenge yourself. And I don't see, frankly, in our company that we are passing up men just for the sake of promoting women, or, that white employees are not getting promoted just for the sake of promoting a diverse person. I just don't see that. It's a much more complex challenge than that. So much more goes into hiring and promotions. And I think that it shortchanges the process if we think of it as, that we're leaving men behind because we're trying to promote women. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Jodi. Jamie P. from WLI, do we have time for any more questions, or do you think that's time to wrap it up?
I think we can do one more.
Okay. All right. One more question. Diversity has been a part of construction contracts for many years with goals for DBE, WBE, VSOB so diverse, woman-owned, veteran small, for those of you, not familiar with those acronyms. Do you see a movement in the future toward hiring firms that have a diverse workforce, diversity in employees, and not just subcontractors, subconsultants?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're a diverse company, and I can tell you each year when I go and renew my certification, I have to disclose, how diverse my company is, whether it's women or minorities. And I tell you what, every year that I've done that, I have never felt satisfied with the numbers that I've put in there. And, again, I think it's still going back to that challenge of having a more diverse industry. And, we really have to work to just get more people in this industry so that we're able to hire them and further diversify our companies. As far as hiring firms that have a diverse workforce, yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly important. I mean, just having the owner of the company being diverse, I mean, I don't really know that that's necessarily getting you a whole lot, right? I mean, because I think the point in those programs is really to promote whether it's women, minorities, veterans, disabled people. I think that is really the point, is to bring up those groups as a whole versus just one person.
Thanks, Stacey. Jodi or Jamie, anything to add? Or okay. So Jamie, I thank all of you ladies for this wonderful, again, real conversation. And I thanks for all the attendees. We had a great group today, and I appreciate it. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie now.
Hi, it's Dusty. I'm going to thank you all for being here and joining us on this really important topic about women in construction and women really in the workplace. So I want to echo thanking all the men who joined us, because you are an important part of this equation. And I really want to thank Jodi and Jamie and Stacey for being so real in their answers and telling us the challenges that women are still facing. And Alyssa, you couldn't have done a better job. It was just amazing. And it is about choosing your challenge. And at WLI, our challenge is to get more women involved in the real estate industry across the board, no matter what your choice is and where you want to be involved. But I just learned something today, that women in construction seem to be making a pretty good chunk of money up that ladder, even though we're still below where we should be. So women out there, I want to encourage you to look at all kinds of fields. I think it's important. If you didn't get your question answered, everybody's going to be in the breakout rooms. You might be able to ask it there. So again, I just want to thank you on behalf of ULI, WLI for attending today. And Jamie, on to the breakout rooms.
Great, thank you, Dusty. I just have a couple of things to say before we go to our breakout rooms. Yes, thank you so much to our speakers, Alyssa, Jamie, Jodi, and Stacey. You ladies did such an amazing job. And I want to also thank Dusty for all that you do for for WLI and ULI Pittsburgh. We appreciate you so much. So again, thank you to our sponsors for making this program possible. We appreciate you. But also we have some programming coming up that I wanted to announce. On March 19th at 2 p.m., WLI and ULI's DEI initiative has a Move Beyond Challenges to Action, which I think everybody should check out if you get a bit of time. I'm going to put the link in the chat right now so you can check that program out. Another program we have is Adaptive Place Toolkit Workshop on 3/25 at noon. You can just visit ULI Pittsburgh's website under events for that. And also save the date for our next Wake Up with WLI featuring Lydia Morin from Connect. And that will be on April 16th at 9 a.m.